welcome back to Wandering into Wellness.
Welcome.
Tonight we have a really special guest. We've been building up this for a little while, Jonathan Cairns. Jonathan, who you guys won't know, you guys may know, in fact a lot of you do know quite well from the year dot, is a really interesting person, a really fascinating person whose story relates to his road to Damascus moment when it comes to health. And there was a really significant shift which we were both really keen to explore, and which you released a book about, which is amazing, got a motivational book. It's a really inspiring story, and so tonight we thought this was kind of a chance to explore some of your story with you and to try and pick behind the curtain a little bit, because for a lot of people, when you see from outside somebody who's transitioned from unhealthy to healthy is a very blunt way to put it, but in some form from a less conscious approach to their diet and their lifestyle to a very conscious approach, it can be it seems like an impossibility for people to do it, right?
Yeah, I think it's also nice to kind of be able to ask those questions of well, I'm somewhere along this journey and I'm trying it, but I've reached this stumbling block, and how did you find it when you reached that stumbling block? And when you're in a situation like this, it's really nice to be able to stop and ask those questions, and for you guys to be able to ask those questions and go, how have you found that? How have you found that? How have you found that? And then also, if you guys have any tips or anything that's happening with you that you want to feedback, it's nice for us to have a forum where it's kind of more like a nice cozy chat around the fire, and we get to all talk and share that learning together.
Yeah. So I guess without further ado, welcome, and can you the most important, the most exciting thing for me is that moment, because we're constantly talking about our family members. When I speak to lots of people through the shop and outside, where you want to bring change to other people's lives, but it's really difficult to do that, and understanding what flicks that switch for people is, I think, really it's the big insight. So for you, can you begin to describe just what was that light bulb moment, or was it probably a few light bulb moments? But
well, I can. I mean, there was a moment, but there was a massive backstory to the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the moment was one day when I was looking at a photograph and I saw myself, and I thought it was somebody else. I said, how could I look that unhealthy?
Wow.
I looked that close to a heart attack. I looked really bad and jowly and just kind of miserable, awful. And I thought, that can't be me. And I went through the other photographs, and they were all me, and I looked the same.
Yeah.
And then I thought, what has happened to me? How did I get there? And that was the first time I looked at how I got from where I thought I was to there.
And is it a case of slow slippage then? Is it a case of you just kind of day in, day out?
It's slow, but it was more like slow. It was more like a hurricane, because I didn't notice.
Okay.
And I was here, and suddenly I was here. I was in a miserable relationship that had finished. I had 3 children, and I was like, what happened?
Yeah. And so, would you say you still found joy in most days in those situations? Did you still have a fun life? Did you feel, or were you actually kind of saying, I'm not having fun?
No, I wasn't laughing very much at all.
Interesting.
At all.
Yeah.
And when I look back, I just gone bust for starters.
Okay.
And I thought, I spent 2 years working to this point. Now I just gone through a miserable breakup as well.
Right.
And with 3 children, and we'd no communication skills, so we were useless. We were 2 people that never should have been together.
Wow.
And obviously we were slow learners. It took us a long time to realize that. So when we separated, there was no communication. And I look back and I thought, if I was to do that again, if it took me another 2 years to build back up, and I couldn't think of anything more miserable than doing what I'd just been doing for 2 years. So it was my light bulb moment. I thought, something here is dreadfully wrong.
Right.
This isn't a happy life. How did I get here? I had 3 children. That was the only good thing that I had.
Okay, amazing. And do you reckon was it a case that you were you made change for them? Is that a big part of the thing?
That was a huge part. I mean, I realized that there's nobody coming to save me here. I either do something, or, I was fighting in court for my kids for access, or for more access. So I thought, if I let this slip, I'm going to regret it forever. So it was very much a case of get it together.
Wow, yeah.
And I looked everywhere for a book on how to wake up one day and get it together. And I couldn't find one.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, okay. Really? I mean, there's all the books out there now.
But there's none for what I wanted.
That's really interesting.
And there's
what were they missing?
They were missing the beginning.
Okay.
How do I get from waking up feeling this way and suddenly realizing for maybe the first time who I am or what I am. Like I'm a 45-year-old overweight middle-aged man that hasn't got a clue where he is or what he's doing.
Wow.
Like, and I couldn't find that book on any shelf.
Like the start from scratch thing, because there's lots of like motivational stories and like I'm here and I'm doing this thing and here's my story of my journey, but not like, and now this is you, and what do you do to literally get up off the couch and then start making change.
There was a lot of books telling me how to do things, and I couldn't get them because I didn't believe them. There was nobody who said, this is what I did.
Okay.
And so without somebody showing me what they did and then I could follow it or not. And that's pretty much what I tried to write then, was what I couldn't find.
Okay. So it's the personal plan, the personality behind the plan as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, like, why running? Why not tennis? Why not swimming? What was the thing?
Well, I'll tell you why. I mean, running, like, it was the easiest thing for me.
Okay.
Because I used to go out at night when nobody could see me because I was so self-conscious. And at night, like, I could run around the block and nobody would see me throwing up over the neighbour's hedge or whatever I might be doing.
Wow.
And I didn't need any gear.
Yeah.
No tennis racket, no membership, so I just went from the front door when everybody else was asleep.
It's kind of a big expression of freedom, of personal freedom as well, isn't it? And probably in a situation of life where you weren't probably having many moments of freedom, you were tied with in a lot of ways, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I had no moments of freedom. That I only realised when I started to run that I had this. There was something else that was possible.
Okay, yeah.
Like I mean, I'm sure you two know the feeling of when you're getting strong, or like it's a very personal strength, self-empowering kind of feeling.
It's huge.
I think it's also like, for me, like I have never been like a running person, but I remember having started doing yoga a bit more frequently, and suddenly I was teaching a good bit of classes and I was teaching them every week and they were getting stronger. I wasn't really conscious of, like, I wasn't doing yoga to get fit, but I was doing it because I loved it. And then one day needing to run for a bus and running for the bus, and like midway through the run, like mentally thinking, I hate running, why am I doing this? And then suddenly going, oh,
But
running, like, this is great. You know, I was like springing along instead of being like, It was like, and then that feeling of going, I could run away from a situation that I needed to escape from is really important. Yeah. As a human, like, we need to have that feeling of like, I can survive a situation where I need to escape. And running does that for us. It gives us that thing of like, I can run away, I can run towards.
It's a discharge in so many ways, isn't it? Because it's a discharge at the time, and there's a sense of empowerment of being able to do it again, and there's the fact that when you go and recover the next time you do it, you tend to do it better than the last time you did. And so, like, when you started doing like a walk, jog, run sort of thing.
I did. I had a loop from my house. It was 3 miles.
Okay.
And I started to walk it, and then I'd jog a little bit and I'd run a little bit, or I'd jog and I'd walk and I'd jog and I'd walk. And I had this thing that if I keep going, eventually I'll be able to run the 3 miles.
Yeah.
But my biggest time was the Sunday night, because that's when I dropped the kids back to their mother. And I felt for them, and I felt guilty, and I felt bad. And I couldn't just drink vodka or something, even though that's what I felt like doing, because I had to get up again tomorrow.
Yeah.
So the running was a way of getting the anger out.
And did you find you went numb in your head when you were running? Like, did your mind switch off?
No, not for a long time. I felt absolutely miserable. Okay. But I felt miserable anyway. I was just shifting it from mental to physical.
Right. Sure.
And it was kind of a relief.
Yeah,
as well.
It's kind of self-harmish in a way, isn't it?
A bit.
It's a bit perverse, like. You're kind of hurting yourself on purpose, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
But you get past that.
You get past it eventually.
Yeah, but then you're always slightly doing that, because, I mean, when you look at like ultramarathon runners, all they talk about is this pain cave situation where they enjoy living in this really viscerally sore thing where their feet are numb, they've got shin splints, they're tying their legs together. Like, is it ever actually just fun, or is it always a bit of pain?
Oh no, it depends what level you go to. Yeah. I mean, if you're just doing it for fitness and to feel good, it gets fun. Yeah. I mean, if you go further than that, it can be a lot of pain.
But you didn't leave it there. I mean, like, you did go past into the pain thing, right? I mean,
I did, yeah.
Describe that a little bit, like a little bit of the progression. I mean, like, we got you to the 3 mile loop, and you got to the point where you could obviously run that.
Yeah, I mean, that took a long time. Like, it took 8 or 9 months before I could do that without stopping and without somebody else stopping the car asking me, was I okay, like a neighbour.
Really? That's brilliant. Okay, right.
So eventually I got to do it.
Oh God, it's Jonathan.
Are you okay? Will we call someone?
Wow.
So after a while, I started to to feel good.
Okay.
But it's all pain then.
Yeah.
And then you start to get good at it. I mean, then I entered a race,
Okay,
a
wow.
5K race.
That's a huge deal. Entering your first race. How
was.
long did that take? How many years have you done?
Oh, well, that was within the first year.
Oh, right.
Like,
Wow.
but I was no way ready.
Okay.
I just thought I was.
Yeah.
And that particular race ran by my house, is the Rathfarnham 5K.
Okay.
So I thought if I just go out, I could just join in and nobody would notice. So.
Dressed in black.
But I didn't know how to run a race. So like I was up the front, thinking if I run really fast, I'll get this over with quickly. So,
Brilliant. Famous last words.
yeah. But after the first kilometre, even, I was finished.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And then I thought, well, if I just catch this really slow person and just stick with them, I might be okay.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't even keep up with them.
Wow. Okay.
And then, like by the time when I got around to even passing our house, I felt if I could just sneak in. But there was too many people on the drive, like, and it was just I couldn't get in. And everyone's clapping, and it was just too hard. So anyway, I did finish it, and I didn't die.
Yes.
And I like all the time I was thinking, okay, if I just get this finished with, I'm never ever doing this again. But when I was finished, I kind of felt, oh, I did it.
Yeah. Weird, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was like it flipped, and I felt like, and everybody around was positive, and nobody was saying, let's go to the pub and get hammered, or let's do this. Like everybody was like good, and it was really nice people to be around.
Yeah.
So then I kind of thought, I'm going to do this again.
Right. Yes. One of the things that Lydia does in her yoga class is interesting. When you, what is the one where you build heat, and what is that called?
Oh, the
Fireball thing?
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's what's the term? A kriya. So a fireball kriya, where like people, it's designed to build you up to the point where you kind of think you can't continue, but there's no point at which you can't continue. And it's like, but it shows that difference between like your mental fortitude and your physical fortitude. Your body will keep going. I mean, like you watch some of these guys like online who, God, I'm thinking of your man Bobbitt. What's his name? God, what's his name? The American guy who's like done Hell Week 4 times, and he did it with like broken shins and all sorts of.
I just read Goggins. Yeah.
Goggins, not
yeah.
Goggins. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, but so anyway, he like his transition through that pain thing is kind of, I mean, it really there's insanity to it, but he realizes that it becomes less and less about the physical game as you go on. Once you get to the point of like I can run, then it's pretty much all up here, right?
It is, yeah, and then it becomes then much worse.
Okay, right, because that's tougher.
It's much harder. Yeah. I mean, it depends on what you're running. But like if you're running a marathon, it's not so bad. It's 26.2 miles or 42 kilometers, but that pain sort of hits you in the last half an hour.
Okay.
Because they say your body can fuel up to 20 miles, say. And after the 20 miles, that's when you've got to come up with something. So either really good training or you eat while you're running or something.
Right, okay.
But if it's longer than that, like if it's a 50k or longer, then you have a lot more pain to go through. Because your body's trying to shut down and you're trying to override it. And it's really, really
and
severe.
The first time you got to that wall, was that in your first marathon or was that?
Oh, no, it was probably in the second one, because the first one, we ran it quite slowly. So the second one was when I tried to do a time.
Okay, wow.
Then I hit that blanket pain, is all I could describe it as.
Okay.
And I mean, but if you know it's coming, or if you know, then you just have to change like your the way you're thinking.
Okay.
And it's not injury, it's pain.
Okay.
So no matter what I do, I can get through it.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot like birth, personally. Because in birth we have this thing, we've been trained our whole lives to associate pain with like illness or something being wrong. And then in birth you're going, yes, there is sensation that is really strong now, but it's not because something is going wrong, it's because something's going right, and I just have to move forwards through it. So then it's about the mental thing of going, okay, I have the thing, and then I have my attitude towards the thing, and I can just change the attitude, and then I just have to deal with the thing. But if my mental stuff gets in the way, then I'm dealing with my mental stuff, and I'm dealing with the challenge. And if you can just find the way to be in that challenge instead of being in your mind, that's better.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I've never given birth, but I have learnt in a particular race that if I let that go, then all the demons come in, and it's almost impossible. But if you can keep it in a place where you're just dealing with it, whether you can box it or whatever it is, but know that I'm going through this and I'm going to keep going through this, it stays like that. But if you think, oh my God, I'm going to die, and let that run, like I really do, like like in one particular race, it was called a Enniskillen, what was it, a last one standing.
Oh God, I read about that in your book. So horrendous.
So every hour, basically, you all start again, and you run a 4-mile loop. So and then there's no winner. Every hour you're starting again, and it's whoever is left after whatever time. There's no end, so it's only whoever's left standing.
Wow.
So it's really hard to gear yourself, because you can't think, okay, if I just save a bit for the next 4 hours, I should be fine, because you've no idea if it's going to go for 2 days or
10
oh
days.
yeah.
It's like that horrible beep test that we used to do. at
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was like beep, run to the dot, beep.
Yeah.
Anyone who hasn't got there,
Yeah.
out. And then you keep going. You're like, geez, I really hope I don't make it to that dot.
Yeah. But there was a point in that race where there was a waterfall at one stage, and it could have been a 10-foot drop. And I thought, if I fall in, I'd be out of the race, because I couldn't give up.
Wow.
And if I fell in, I'd injure myself, but I wouldn't kill myself, so I'd probably be okay.
It's insanity.
And I actually contemplated it, and I missed it, because it was during the night, and I had a lamp on my head, and I didn't see it when I went around. But I was thinking that would be a way out.
That's your way out.
Yeah.
You were heading for the waterfall.
Yeah.
That's
To fall
insane.
in.
And so, like, how many miles are they getting through before they finish that insane Enniskillen?
Well, I mean, I only
you
lasted.
did it.
I lasted 50 something miles, 12 hours only. But they went, I think, 126 that particular year miles.
Wow. And so, when you're entering something like that, why are you entering?
I thought, this is going to be easy.
Okay.
I mean, it's like the loop right from my house. Like, and every time you can come back and have a cup of tea, and you can, have a chat, and then just do another loop.
So, like the first loop, you finish it with what? How many minutes to spare?
Oh, the first one was 15 minutes to spare.
Oh, nice.
So
So it
you-
is a cup of tea.
Yeah, you sit down and you chat, and you think, this is going to be easy. And then 4 more loops, and it's like, oh, this is getting really hard. And then the stopping is a problem, because you're getting stiff.
Oh yeah. So,
So
you shouldn't be stopping.
every other race you go until you finish, and then stopping becomes difficult, or starting again is difficult, and then everything starts to happen, because if you want to rest, you have to run faster,
Okay.
and so everything kind of works in reverse to a normal race.
Oh, that's vicious. So your pacing is opposite. Like,
Yeah, and it's very hard to come to terms with,
Absolutely.
and because then the more exhausted you get, the less oxygen seems to go to your head, and then the less you can figure it out.
Of course. Yeah.
And it's just-
You're more discombobulated and having to work harder, both mentally
Yeah.
and physically. Wow.
And it becomes really tough.
Jesus. And did you help like with like the mental health aspect of this? Did you have like a psychiatrist? I mean, other than possibly somebody sitting down there, but like, did you have like a professional person who dealt with your mindset around?
Not when I got to there. I mean,
Okay.
when I was running marathons at first, and I was trying to beat 4 hours,
Okay.
that was a thing, because
Yeah.
I was just missing it. And I rang a guy, Neil O'Brien. He's I don't know what I'd call him, but he's not quite a shrink or a life coach, but he works with athletes,
Okay.
golfers mainly.
Okay. Brilliant.
And I rang him and I said, look, I'm going to Tralee tomorrow to run the marathon, and I seem to just implode when I get to within the last couple of miles. And I said, can you help me? And on the phone he said, oh yeah, no problem. And straight away I thought, oh great, in the bag. And then he gave me a few tips on how to think. And he's saying normally like the first half of the marathon is great and the second half is tough. And he said, okay, we're going to switch those.
Oh.
So we're going to have a really tough first half. So I was trying to make that really tough when I was running, and then I'm going to have a great one the second half. And then he gave me just a couple of things to do and ways to think.
Okay.
And so, as it happened, with I think 2 miles to go, I don't quite remember. There's a pacer,
Yeah.
and they have a balloon, and that balloon is 4 hours on it, and I was way ahead of that pacer.
Oh, okay.
And within about 2 miles to go, my knee just gave in, and I thought, oh God, I can't do this. I cannot live with another almost. And then the pacer went by me, and a crowd that were with him. And only then I started to go through everything that he'd been telling me. Like, it was just one mantra. So clear my mind of every single thing, except I think it was, I'm trained for this, I'm strong, I'm going to do it, or something that simple. And that's all I thought. And I just went one foot after the other until I got them in my sights again.
Wow. So you caught up.
I caught them and I passed them with I think a half a mile to go. And I managed it, and I did it by I think 20 seconds I actually managed. But I just had to I rid my mind of every thought,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
my body was just total pain, and it was, you can't do this, stop, you can't do it, stop. And so once I overcame it, and it worked. But that was the only time I actually got mental help.
Okay. Other than that, it all came from internal.
Yeah.
So that's part of it, obviously, the mental coaching part. What about your nutritional aspects? That's the part like we deal with all day long in here. Did you like? Did your diet change hugely? I mean, well, I know obviously it did. The plant-based running, you shifted diet, but why and how and?
When I started, I when I look back at it now, I was a mess.
Okay.
I mean, my favourite restaurant was a steakhouse in Terranure. I drank bottles of wine in the evening, red wine, and that was normal. And I thought I was eating a good, healthy diet. And the more I ran, the less I could eat meat.
Okay.
That was the start.
Wow. So it's less you tolerated digestively?
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, I'm celiac anyway, so I have digestive issues, you could say.
Yeah.
But if I had a steak on Wednesday, on Saturday morning, I'd still get a stitch after 10 miles.
Wow.
So I started to think, oh, wait a minute, there's something here. Mm-hmm. So I stopped eating meat, and I could run further. And then I picked up a book one day and we started making green smoothies. Mm-hmm. And I started to feel better. And everything was marked by running.
Okay, yeah.
And so even if I ate something today and tomorrow I ran really well, then I'd stick to what I ate.
So you're really testing it as you go? You're really
I tested everything that I ate. And I mean, if I felt worse, I just bring it back.
Okay, yeah.
And 9 years later, I'm now a plant-based, whole food runner.
Amazing.
And that's just everything that has worked. I never decided I'm going to go vegan, I'm going to be anything. And I'm not. I just happened to be here from purely testing every single thing and putting it to a running test.
Okay. Were you a good cook? Were you were
No.
you into food? Was that a thing, or did you have to really educate yourself around the whole
No,
idea?
well, my kids have always been vegetarian.
Okay, all right.
So I brought them up as vegetarian.
Oh, wow.
So I'm used to cooking vegetarian food and not having a space on the plate.
Yeah. Okay,
And was that your choice to bring them up vegetarian?
Yeah, well, the two of us, like myself and my ex-partner, that's the way it had always been, and that wasn't ever an issue. Like it was.
Yeah.
It was fine.
It was the default. It felt like the default at the time.
Yeah.
And why them and not you?
Yeah.
Well, I actually was once a vegetarian.
Oh, right.
And then I go back to eating meat.
Okay.
And then I go as a vegetarian. I kind of thought it might be healthier, but I love steak and I love meat. And my brother and his wife had a dairy farm down in West Cork, and I'd look at the cows and think, oh, that one looks gorgeous. Like I'd say to be great sizzle.
Jonathan, get away from the back of the cow.
And that's how I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the correlation between my health and meat or on food. I mean, now it's totally different now.
Yeah.
I mean, now I actually feel for animals, but then I didn't.
Okay.
It didn't enter my head.
Yeah, the connection wasn't there.
No,
Yeah, okay.
there was none. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And can we go back a bit? Can we go back to before you made this change? What was your daily life like in terms of, in your work? Were you sitting at an office? Did you commute there in a car? How much exercise did you do a week? What did you hang out with the kids? What did that look like?
I worked in the US. I used to sell property in Florida to Irish people. And we used to build or convert buildings into condos and sell them to Irish people and package it and finance it. And so I spent at least a month or a week in every month in Orlando. And I don't know if you know Orlando, but Orlando is a kind of place where you die and go to Orlando, like if you were bad. I mean, it's soulless place, and it's very pretend. Like there's, we have this fabulous Disney here, and but there's no heart or soul in Orlando. Like it's a terrible place. Yeah. And I mean, the people I worked with, I suppose, were similar to me. It's like I don't ever remember laughing in Orlando. Like it was work, and so I was on planes a lot, in airports, late nights. Bringing people to see things, collecting people from airports, and food didn't really cross my mind. Like it was whatever was handy, and the only reason for going out for dinner was to get a bottle of wine in, kind of like to entertain someone, or and it was an exercise. Just there was none. I didn't think of it.
One of the things you said to me before is that you feel that's a bonus though. in some ways, because you've sort of got like an extra years in your knees that other people who've been running since they were kids don't have.
I do, for sure. I mean, probably. I mean, I know there are people who would have been into athletics in school and always kept it up, and by the time they're my age, like they're having difficulties.
Yeah.
So I'm quite lucky.
Did you spare the joints?
So
I don't know if lucky is the word, but yeah.
Neither we are, not
You
sure.
did like the thing that the mental coach told you to do. You like reversed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You did
The first bit
bad
hard
bit
and the last
hard,
bit easy.
and then
Yeah.
the next bit's
Yeah,
easier.
but there are times when I'd be training for something and I would like hit a crisis. And I remember I came in here a few years ago, and it was before a marathon, and there was, I think, 2 weeks to go, and suddenly I was crippled with a cold. I felt sweaty, weak, and I didn't have time for a cold or that. So I came in here and I said to you, I'm running a race in 2 weeks. Can you help me? And you said, yeah, don't run it. I said,
I remember that distinctly. I remember saying, just don't run. Simple.
I said, that's not an option. So you said, okay, well, if you're going to be like that. And you gave me a couple of things you suggested.
Yeah.
And I took them and I was fine. But I took them morning, noon and night. And also, I mean, like another time, maybe 6 months later, I was getting sore joints and I was running a lot. It was for, I think, a 100K race. And I was feeling the wear and tear.
Yeah.
So you gave me this really simple drink you recommended to me with, I think it was cider vinegar, cayenne pepper, cinnamon, and all anti-inflammatories and turmeric. And so I still drink it.
Yeah.
And anytime I get to where I'm feeling creaky or running too much, I just drink it. And at first, I mean, it used to be like hold my nose and drink it. Now I just put some honey in or something. And it's fine.
It's funny how your taste buds kind of evolve to these things. When you kind
Always,
of, once you know that something's good for you and it does good for you, it's very difficult to then still go like that thing, isn't it? When it's really served you. Like.
Except for one thing you recommended to me.
Glutathione. You know, I've done the same to her as well.
So disgusting. But you didn't warn me at all the first time. You were just like, take the glutathione. I am tough, but that thing is, I mean, that thing is revolting. It's like rotten eggs mixed with some kind of...
It's like a gone-off oyster.
Oh, God, it's disgusting.
Yeah, the texture of an oyster, and it has the aftertaste of a rotten egg.
But also the one you gave me was actually gone off. So I had glutathione that was gone off. Double bad.
Got to use it up though, right? Did I charge you for it?
No, it was free.
Yeah, but glutathione is a vicious one. It's one of the things we like keep coming back to because there's so many things. Because for inflammation, because your liver's involved, because blood sugar is involved, because your DNA is getting damaged by all the extra training you're doing, because your nervous system. Like it's such a top-down nutrient. It's amazing. I mean, so many people, I think, kind of have a love-hate for that thing, and it's unfortunate that it's mostly a hate.
Yeah, it does work.
They hate me for it, but they love the thing. They love the result.
It definitely works.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, it does.
But I don't think I'll start craving it.
No. But I do rely on people like coming here for when I need advice on nutrition. I come here and I get it.
Amazing.
And I take it.
Okay.
When I need, like at the moment, I'm going to I have a race coming up in September, so I'm trying to get stronger in different ways, because it's a 100-mile race. So after a certain amount of mileage, the body starts to collapse, like not just the legs.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to build it up. So there's a place called the Movement Studio.
Oh yeah.
So in Terranure.
Terranure, there's great guys. I know them.
Yeah. So I go in there and I do a couple of classes a week on, like stretching my hips and just specific things, and I'm finding that good. Like so, anywhere I can get help, I go for it and I take it.
And it's quite often the disassociated training from the sport you do. You quite often hear athletes say that. It's when, like in Movement Studio, I went down to do start handstands down there.
Yeah.
And really that can help with your running because it solves postural things, because it brings strength to your to mobility in your core and all these sorts of things that you don't think, well, it's not my legs, why would I bother?
Yeah.
And yet actually that's quite often a really good way of facilitating your actual sport, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And awareness as well, but I mean it's all awareness, isn't it? When you're looking for mastery over your body, you're going every movement-based thing that you can do is going to bring awareness to you, and you might get a little moment, a little kernel where you're like, oh, that's how I do that thing with my shoulders, or this is what I do when I'm in my stress place. I imagine in running, I can't say that I've done a marathon, but if you were doing that and you were in that place where you suddenly start feeling pain in some area, noticing like, oh, this is what I do when I'm feeling stress, and then suddenly you're bringing tension to those areas, and to be able to know like, oh, actually I can soften in that place. That's easier. And you might learn that in yoga, but then you might go to handstands and you're like, oh, if I shift my perspective, that's going to help me to
Yeah.
get further in this moment.
Yeah.
I think movement as medicine it's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Medicine is the thing, actually. Isn't it?
And it gives confidence to me anyway.
Yeah. And it keeps it exciting and playful and joyful.
Yeah.
So it's not just like I'm only running, that is the
Yeah.
only thing that I do.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
how are you ramping up your training schedule then for 100 miles? I mean, I can't even imagine. I literally can't even imagine. I can't imagine doing a marathon. So how do you get to 100 miles and where do you?
Slowly.
Yeah.
I mean, you start slowly.
Yeah.
Like you'd start. Your mileage would be maybe 5 miles, or are you miles or kilometers?
A bit of both, actually. Weirdly, it's like the only one I can slip from both.
Okay, well, say 5 miles. You
Yeah.
start. You do it a couple of times a week, and you do 10 miles at the weekend.
Okay, yeah,
And so you'd have to be from the start. You'd have to be ready for that.
yeah, okay,
And then you would up it then to, like at the moment, I think it's at about 50 miles a week, and it'll go up then to 70, and then you'll do maybe a 30, 40 mile one day and a 20 the next day when you're exhausted.
and okay. So are you good at listening to yourself when your body's and how do you distinguish between when your body's actually saying no and your mind's saying no for the
No,
training?
I'm not very good.
That's what you're doing, so I suppose.
No, I'm not very good. I find that very hard
Yeah.
because the first thing I think of when I'm really tired is, oh, I think I have a sore knee, and I don't. But my mind does something to try and get me to rest, you know.
Wow.
So I have to blot out everything that's not right, and I have to actually go with a gut feeling.
Okay.
And my mind is usually wrong, and my gut feeling is usually right.
Yeah.
So that's why I come to places like this, and I go to places like the green market every weekend,
Yeah.
because if I feed myself right,
Yeah.
and I'm training right, I trust it.
It's so interesting that trust thing. There's this. I've referred to this before with you. This like South Sea Island culture where they have 3 names for the brain, and they have 3 different brains, and they have like the first brain, the second brain, and the third brain. The first brain is their gut, the second brain is their heart, and the third brain is their brain as we call it. And they have the same name in their language for that brain as the one that when they get their fishing nets tangled. It's like this is only the brain that gets in the way. Like this brain is the one to trust. This brain's a good brain as well, but this one's like, nah, just don't listen.
Take
It's
it
only
away.
going to lead you astray. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you start to get into pain, that's exactly right.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so when you're in the middle of this kind of training phase now, and you're sort of building up to serious mileage, do you manage to like? How do you start out sore every day? Like is every day?
No. I feel quite good. I mean,
it's amazing. I mean, like
I know.
I feel like I literally would never be without pain.
oh no, I don't. I rarely feel in pain.
Wow.
I mean, I'd only feel in pain after maybe mile 20 or something. Like
Okay.
if it was if I was running too fast, or
Yeah.
if I was dehydrated, especially.
Okay, yeah,
And that's the biggest killer for me, or I think for most people. But
And how do you hydrate? Actually, that's an important thing. It's something I would like to hear more about.
well, I try and drink enough water the days before.
Yeah, because right beforehand is not a great idea.
No,
Unless
it's
you
not,
want to
'cause-
find bushes and cramps and
Yeah,
everything.
and neighbours don't like that. But
You're done getting sick over the wall. You're not going to start peeing in the bushes. Are
yeah. So I mean, I carry a backpack with water.
Okay, you have camel pack with you
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And is it like a straw situation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the only way for that distance.
Okay. And do you know anyone who's doing that 100-mile as
No,
well? Or
no.
You're going to that pretty much solo.
Yeah.
Is there like I don't know anything about this. Is there like another stage after the 100 mile? Like where does this stop? Are you just going to start running one day and like Forrest Gump, like, never end?
Jonathan. Yes, okay.
No, there is. You see, I did a 100-mile last year, and I had been thinking about it for 2 years. And in fact, it was 107 miles from Belfast to Dublin, and I found it so difficult that my feet were so blistered on mile, I think 70, that like I hadn't got a centimetre left that wasn't blistered, and I wasn't in such pain that I ended up having to walk the last 30. So I kind of have to go and rectify that before I can relax.
Wow.
It's,
But then will there be another one that you have to rectify?
well, there. I don't know. I'll tell you that
Stop
next
pushing
year.
for that answer.
No, but I'm just wondering, like, does it come to a point where you kind of feel like I've done that thing now?
Oh well, I don't think so, because I feel fabulous when I'm training like this. Like I wake up in the morning, I feel great. I go to bed, I feel great. During the day, I feel good, and I eat well because I'm training, and it all fits in together, and it just makes me feel fabulous. Like it doesn't do any harm to me.
Yeah.
Like my joints feel great. Like people would say, "Oh, your knees will be gone." Like my knees feel better, much better than they did 9 years ago before I started running.
Interesting.
So every part of me feels better. So No, there isn't a stop sign anyway there.
And do you feel now, say an injury happened and you couldn't run,
Yeah.
do you feel like you've built up enough mental tools that if there was a situation where you couldn't run, you would have the strength and the mental tools to stay in this place that's really, really good and really, really healthy without the running? Or do you feel like the running is like absolutely key, and if you took it away, what happens?
I think
It's a very scary question. It's really reaching.
it is a scary
Yeah, that's
question.
all right.
I think that I have the tools now, and because I've been doing it for so long. I mean, if this happened to me in the first year, as it does a lot in the hard period, it's very, very difficult. But now I think I'd be strong enough and mentally strong enough to get over any kind of injury, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So going back then, you've 3 kids.
Yeah.
How old are they?
Now they're 21, 20 and 16.
And how has your relationship changed with them? Like, do they run with you? Do they feel differently? Like, have you talked to them about how you were as a dad before versus how you were now, and how that works?
Yeah, well, that's quite a complex question, because I don't see one of my daughters since the separation. Well, since a couple of years after. So she's kind of with her mum.
Okay.
But now she's 21, so I don't talk to her at all at the moment. My son is very sporty. He won't run with me because he says I run like a dad, like I run slow.
I love it. I knew he was going to say that. It's awful, isn't it? Like, even though you're like breaking all the boundaries in the world, it's like, nah, you're still a dad. It's still embarrassing, you know?
Kids are brutal.
Aren't they? Harsh.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, kids are so harsh. I mean,
Yeah.
like that's one of the things that you mentioned earlier about cooking. That's what you find with cooking for kids.
Oh, yeah.
Kids will never say, "Oh, Dad, that's fabulous." Like it's either, or they just eat it all,
Yeah, that's exactly.
and there's no.
You hear about it, it's terrible.
Yeah, now they're polite because they're older, but younger they aren't. But yeah, he's very sporty, but he wouldn't run with me because he'll do sprints
Okay.
when he's training. He's a hurler, but he wouldn't come with me. I'd embarrass him.
Really. But he'd come out and support you when you're doing your 100
Oh,
miles.
we would, yeah. Like he'd be my crew sometimes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That must be quite nice to have family involved at that level, because it's very different to having like training people who are friends or other.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and
Huge sport.
yeah, like in that 100 miles I was talking about from Belfast, when I got to certain stages where I wanted to die almost, and I wanted a reason to give up, and then he'd get out of the car, either himself or he'd get out of the car. Fiona, my wife, would drive off, so as I couldn't get into the car, and then he'd go, with me to the next stage, kind of.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, like it's nice and it's comforting, and I know that he knows me, and I can't bullshit him either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So-
oh no, the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is that it, Dad? Is that all you have? Kind of a look, like, and it's crushing.
Yeah.
So it's like you got to go.
Wow.
But it's such
God,
a
seriously.
fascinating, I mean, it's such templating though as well for them. Like, I think when you're living an active lifestyle, and like specifically for you, you've made these changes that you didn't just kind of go, I kind of like to do it, so I know what, I'll just stop eating meat.
Yeah.
You like
Yeah.
went for it and you did it and you committed to it and you're still doing it. I mean, as parents, one of the things that we're trying to do is template for our kids.
Yeah.
Like, these are ways that you could potentially deal with challenging situations in your life. Here are options, and I mean, you're doing that like so impressively.
It feels good to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It does feel good.
Yeah, it's certainly not one of those duplicitous moments where you're reaching for the biscuit cup and saying, no, you can't have any sweets. yeah.
No.
Definitely not.
No, it's not.
And do you cook now with them, or do you have still like?
Oh yeah. No, we don't.
Yeah.
We always do and always have eaten the same thing.
Okay, nice. Oh, good.
So
okay.
yeah, no, we don't do. Never did separate meals. Or
Okay.
Just I used to go out to steak restaurants when they were with their mum and not
Right.
with me, kind of that
Right.
sort of thing. I mean, the thought of it now, like, I just can't imagine it. But that's what I used to be like.
Yeah. Isn't it weird how quickly we kind of forget the old version of ourselves?
Yeah.
Like how that kind of disappears in the rearview mirror. We're like, I can't remember what it was like to beat that person.
I know, and now I'm almost tempted to tell people how fantastic this is, and people will look, oh God, here he goes again.
Yeah, it's like we're allowed to do it here, but like not
Yeah,
after.
yeah.
So your recipes are amazing. I mean, it's really interesting to see. Like, I mean, I saw it as a running book, but then we looked at the recipes. There's some really good stuff. Did you spend a long time? Are you very like forensic in the kitchen about those sorts of things?
No, I'm actually not at all.
Okay.
I'm the opposite.
Jeez, you have to work hard for this then.
Well, everybody likes, like people say, God, that's fabulous. What is it? And then I try and get something that would match it, only probably much better, and put a name on it.
Okay, yeah.
Because it'd be normally whatever is for sale in the organic market is what will be cooked and eaten.
Yeah.
And like with some basics, either pasta or lentils or whatever it might be. But I wouldn't have a name for everything that I'd normally eat on day to day.
Okay. But when I say forensic as well, I'm kind of referring a little bit to like the macros and the nutrient levels and stuff. Do you get picky around that, like from a training point of view?
No.
You just kind of eat as much as makes you feel good, and that's kind of it.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I ignore that pretty much,
Okay.
and I eat what my body tells me is good.
Wow.
And when I need it, I eat more. But I get quite clean when I train a lot. As in, I'd have a lot of smoothies and.
Yeah. And do you use gels when you're running? I know it's a very nerdy question.
No.
But yeah. Okay. So
I used to.
Right?
I used to.
There we go. Yeah. What's a gel?
A gel is a sugar drink that gives you a boost when you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Or when you're not even in trouble, it just gives you that fuel so you don't hit the wall.
And that's to take water across your gut wall as well. It does all sorts of interesting things in your gut when you really need to be able to hydrate more effectively.
I used to.
Yeah.
But I read a book by, I think, somebody called Maffetone.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you read it.
Yeah.
And he does this thing on a heart-based run. So it made sense to me. And I tried to follow that at one stage. So after I read his book the first time, one of them, then I planned that I thought I could do the 100 mile, and I planned it 2 years out.
Okay.
And I started running on heart rate. But the first thing you do is give up sugar, because you learn to run on fat instead of sugar. And with enough fat, all of us like to run all day.
Yeah.
So you just need to get used to it.
And so, are you in that now? Or
I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. Okay. So you turned to what we call a fat adapted athlete then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I started running on body fat instead of sugar.
That's
so
amazing.
the first stop on that is to give up sugar altogether.
Yeah.
So I stopped eating sugar.
Yeah.
And is that like fruit sugars as well?
No, not natural sugar like fruit, but any processed sugar.
Anything where the sugar is like taken away from its fibery, foody goodness. Sort of.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's quite difficult, and like you start off by running quite slowly, and your heart rate, like depending on your age, there's a certain heart rate where you stay within. So the people I was running with were almost embarrassed to run with me at the time because I was running so slowly.
Okay.
But after 6 months, then I'd be running the same heart rate, maybe a lot faster, and then faster, and then you can run for longer and longer. And you never take sugar gels then. So then it's just food.
Yeah.
And how does that work with food? Like, do you just eat liquid food or solid food or?
Yeah, well, I mean, my wife Fiona tries to feed me all sorts of stuff on a long run, I guess,
Right.
and whatever works. I mean, the last time I must have had 10 different foods out, and then she was drinking this soup. There was a gluten-free soup stand, and I tasted it, and then that's all I drank for the rest of that, because it doesn't need much digestion, it's already liquid. But it changes.
And is it important that it tastes good to you? Like, is that a big part of like whether you can take it or not?
Well, sometimes because your stomach shrinks, and quite often it rejects stuff. So it's really, it's good that it tastes good. Yeah.
I was watching a YouTube video recently. What's her name? Is it Courtney something? I can't remember. She runs like. Yeah. Courtney DeWalter. Yeah. So she was running this 200-mile race. Not to put your 100 miles in the shade. This is ridiculous. But like she was running a 200 miles. It's insane. Like it's actually. I mean, they were talking things like she was sleep running. Yeah. There was a couple of times she came back into camp and they sent a pacer out with her because they were nervous about her. And he was like, I think she was actually asleep a bit of the time. Like how many falls? 3 falls. Like like what is this?
Running.
But when she was doing this 200 miles, the first I think 120 miles she couldn't keep food down.
Yeah.
But they kept feeding her this rubbish, like this weird rubbish. Hopefully they don't see this, but there was no thought about nutrition. It was just like they were like, try some waffles, try some pancakes. I was like, why haven't they tested this out before? Like, I mean, she's like one of the top runners in the world. It's bizarre how like unproven it was, and you
see this all the time.
It's weird.
All the time, and when people get to that stage, like terrible things happen.
Yeah.
I mean, not only do they get diarrhea, they throw up at the same time, and like that's the thing about running. You have to leave your ego at home.
But then they keep running. That's the really tough part. Like what?
Yeah.
What?
You passed that sense of caring.
I guess so. Yeah, fair enough. Sense of caring. Let's call it.
It seems like such a weird thing though, because we're taught to, like, everything that we're doing is kind of teaching us. If we were in this kind of wellness field, is teaching us to listen to our body and to go like, what is the thing that my body needs right now? Okay, I'm throwing up. That means I need rest. So I can't imagine how you get to a point where you're like throwing up and going, keep on running for another 100 miles. Like, what happens? How do we get to a stage where that's positive?
With her, it was actually because the guy she was competing with. That was weird. Sorry, but there was a moment where he was like, she was ahead of two guys, and she runs as a runner rather than a woman against men. So it's because she kind of wants to just be competing as a level playing field athlete. And the guy was catching her because she was, puking and had diarrhea and hadn't been able to fuel herself for 120 miles. And she was sleep running, and got to the point where he got within, I think, like they said on one of the checks, she's like sat down, she's covered in tinfoil. She's like, how far behind is he? And they were like, I was like, I don't know, 30 minutes. She's like, okay, takes it off, goes, And she's like, it's unreal what fuels people. And for her, it was definitely that competitive thing with this other guy. It was it was really weird. It was pretty depraved, to be honest. I mean, what is it? You're not running against someone.
I'm running against me, and only me.
Yeah.
But it's a mind thing. It's to think that I can do this.
Yeah.
And like it goes back to the very beginning, when I couldn't run around the block, and it's almost the same.
Okay.
And it's not as hard as the beginning.
Okay.
Because you know the way, and you know that it's going to work.
Yeah.
And you know you won't die probably. So it's much easier than it is to run around the block 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And also you know that if I can overcome that, I can overcome anything. And because you've set out to overcome it, there is no stopping. Like you have to go until you're either injured or you finish.
It's amazing.
As opposed to just in pain. But it's a mind.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
Thing, yeah.
And tell me, so do you do another job?
Oh, I do. Yeah, no, I have a day job.
You have time for another job of running.
How do you do a job? How do you fit in? For people listening who are going, well, I'm really busy. There's no way I have time to run 20 miles on the weekend or 10 miles a day. Like, how do you fit that in? And what would you say to them, in terms of that?
Well, I would say the more you run, the more energy you'll have. So, I get up at 5 o'clock every morning, and I have 5 to 7, as my time. And so I can write, I can do whatever, read, and then in the evenings I run.
Okay.
So I'll run either 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock or till 9, whatever it takes when I'm training for something. At the weekend I run in the mornings. So normally I'd get home just as the kids are getting up would be how it would work. Not always, but that's how it kind of works. So it's discipline and consistency, for training, for me. That's
amazing. Yeah. I'm really curious about things. We sometimes ask podcast guests some slightly random questions. What would your report cards from primary school is there? I know we have at your parents' school. So probably going to read them out. I didn't ask them to bring them, unfortunately. But are there things in here that you can understand that there's parts of you that this level of discipline would have made sense? It would have made sense for you to be this person when you were a tot.
Oh, it absolutely would have.
Would it?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So
I didn't have it in any way, but it would have.
Okay.
It would have. I'd be a different person for sure.
Oh, you mean it would have been useful for you, but you weren't necessarily that way?
Yeah.
Your report cards
it absolutely
tenacious.
would have been useful. There's things that I learnt over the last 9 years that are number one is focus. And if you focus on something, it becomes real and it becomes much easier, and everything about it becomes part of you. Yeah. And discipline is essential. And if you have discipline and focus, you're way ahead of where you were before you had it.
Yeah.
And then other things just kind of fit in, like consistency, and you bring other things in that help with that, like nutrition and whatever else. But absolutely, that's had I been told that instead of had to go through the last 9 years to find it, would have been great.
So your report cards didn't say dogged and determined and tenacious and.
No.
What were you like as a kid?
I was rebellious.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's something. I can definitely identify with that as well, because there's nothing that anyone would have said I was ever going to do in life but be rebellious, basically.
Yeah.
And it's useful in this territory because this is basically rebellion in
Absolutely.
shop form.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so is there do you think do you think you've turned into is it a different person? Is it a different Jonathan, or is it the same Jonathan we're looking at?
I don't know. It's certainly a smarter Jonathan.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like
with tools.
I have tools that I never had before, And I mean, they're the tools that I found so hard to get.
Yeah. I wish they were teaching it in schools. I mean, there's so many things we keep coming across. We're like, why isn't that a class in school? Like self-discipline taught in a creative way, or the things that we sit down and tend to learn tend not to be the life things that actually turn us into really successful humans. Like,
yeah, I mean, when I look at your name, even wandering into wellness, like there's no way you two are wandering. Like you're like a train going flat out. Like
well,
because your focus is all about wellness.
Well, true. Yeah.
So like you don't wander like over there and wonder what's going to happen next. Like because you have that focus and the discipline, obviously. Like look around, like there's you're far from wandering. So like with focus comes everything.
But what I think what we're specifically doing is that we're not feeding an edict, because like we eat differently, we are different. You do really different things to us, but there's so many different versions of health. That's what I think is really exciting. There's no like one template, and I think what probably the books you're reading and the books I see and everybody who's online and influencing us kind of wants to tell us is that there's one way to do things.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that's what you have to kind of put away, and that's why I think this book is so useful, because you have this is just one man's journey. Take it or leave it. Pick up what you need from it. And then do your own thing, sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, very much. I mean, all I can say is what worked for me.
Yeah.
And I tried hard on everything.
Yeah.
Mainly food-wise. The exercise was the easy bit.
Okay, really? Like, food was the struggle?
Yeah, a big struggle.
Okay.
I mean, like to try and find out what makes you feel good is really hard.
Yeah.
And that's why out of all the recipes that are in it, like everything in it is just what makes me feel good.
Okay.
Like basic things like green juice in the morning makes me feel great. If I don't have it, I notice it. Now, that might not work for you, but it works for me. So,
that is a new edict. The celery juice in the morning thing is like an antidepressant and everything else. It's amazing. It's weird. It's being like.
But I think it's so good to have someone who's leading the way in that thing of going. Intuition is the key thing here. It's like. It's not what you get told in those books. It's not what you get told by the nutritionist. It's not. It's like, what is your unique body? What is your unique way to get to that end point? And everyone's going to do it differently. Like maybe it's running for you.
Yeah.
It's definitely not for me.
Well, it wasn't for me in the beginning. Like I would have much rather had a swimming pool close. I would have done something that I wouldn't have been so obvious and like about. I could have hidden better. But it just happened to be running.
Yeah.
Like for somebody else, it could be like cycling or whatever else. But I didn't have a bike. I didn't have anything. It just was the easiest thing for me at the beginning. And now people say to me, "Oh, you're a runner," but I never thought I was a runner of myself. So it's just like it's different for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's nice as well because there's kind of no excuses with the running thing as well. Like you're saying, like with yoga, you can. I mean, it is a personal practice, and you really just can do it everywhere. But people think like I have to go to the yoga studio, and I have to have the mat, and I have to have the clothes, and I have to have the blah blah blah. With running, it's like it's not like you can go, well, my gym membership's expired, or I've got to get to the gym, but I can't do that. It's just like. And there is ground.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
Even on the
don't
spot.
have shoes. It's fine.
Just do it.
And there is no hiding either, which is hard sometimes, but it's good.
Yeah. And so when you come in from a run, this is a bit of a micro point, but like, do you, what do you fuel yourself with? Do you always have like protein shakes straight away, or what do you do with that?
It depends. If it's a long run, like I say, long run. If it's maybe 15 to 20 miles or over, I'll always have a protein shake that I make.
Yeah. Okay.
I use Sun Warrior protein powder.
Okay.
I have a thing whereas any protein powder that I've tried, I have run for 20 miles and then I've taken it. And if I feel the next day, if I feel perfect muscles wise, then that's what I use.
Okay, interesting.
If I feel sore and stiff, I don't use it again.
Go there again.
So the Sun Warrior works for my body.
Okay, interesting.
And the next day I wouldn't know that I'd run yesterday.
That's amazing.
So
that says an awful lot.
So that's my protein powder.
Your crucial thing. And do you mess around? Do you have a great like kind of smoothie shake recipe or anything like that? Like.
No, none. Well, whatever, whatever they have, whatever green leaves they have, whatever. Like I don't like to buy.
Okay.
Like I like to buy stuff that's organic if possible, and whatever they have and it's freshest, I'll drink.
Yeah. And one of the things you were saying, and I'm going to give you this because I'm sure you actually probably want it, and you haven't really reached for it at all. Sorry. So you're becoming quite conscious around the amount of consumption of plastic and that sort of thing as well. This is like a bit of a thing for you, which is, I mean, it's a bit of a thing. I mean, it's the way the world needs to go. But when it comes to training, running, all that sort of stuff, it's a very consumerist thing as well. And you see the mass of detritus left after big runs. Is there?
Oh, it's shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't get into this voluntarily. My wife kind of forced me. because anytime I go somewhere and I'd reach for plastic, she'd point it out, and now I can't not see it. So
Yeah.
I was fine when I didn't see it, but now, like, that's a glass bottle you handed me, but anything we buy, if there's plastic on it, I feel bad about it.
Yeah.
So it's the same with food. Once you know something, you can't unknow it. So when you can't unknow it, it's really hard.
Yes.
Then you have to make a decision every single time.
Yeah.
Like I have a reusable coffee cup, and I have to, if I don't bother taking it to the coffee shop, I feel bad about it. But it's okay to feel bad about it, but at least I know it.
I think we've got about another 2 years of feeling bad about it before we're kind of like, okay, we can't get the coffee now when we go to the coffee shop.
Yeah,
It's getting really that close, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice when you're presented with such a reality where it's not the optionality is kind of disappearing, because you're like, I don't have to make the decision anymore. It's kind of like it's just done for me. I'm not going to be able to mess around with this one. I can't. I just have to have the coffee cup or whatever.
Yeah, but marathons are shocking.
Yeah.
Like if you take the Vienna Marathon, with its 40,000 people, and there might be 20 drink stations.
Yeah. Wow.
And everybody takes a drink on the way. Like there is so much plastic.
Yeah. It's amazing how quickly people are waking up to that as well. So I feel like that's almost going to be like this year, next year, you're probably going to see massive change in that. There's going to be, if it's not compostable cups, there'll be no cups at all. Or
once it's pointed out and people know it, then it's a big help.
Yeah.
A huge help.
Yeah.
And people take responsibility if they feel it, I suppose.
Yeah. I think that takes responsibility to feel, and that works inside out as well. And it's kind of the same thing you've done in your life internally. It's just looking at the external world in the same version. It's like, am I going to be responsible in terms of what I put in my body? And am I going to be responsible like what goes out there as well?
Exactly.
Yeah. I
exactly.
mean, when I was in India recently, we had this really interesting. It was amazing because everyone kind of talks about India like, oh, you went and was it really dirty? And I'm like, well, I mean, yes, but that's just because everything's on show. Here we're great at hiding our waste, but we're producing far more of it. And we have this kind of like this thing of like, if you out of sight, out of mind thing, whereas almost if you like, well, if you turn the tip heads back on the side of the streets in Dublin, you kind of like, oh, I think that will reduce our waste production real fast.
Yeah.
Showing it to us is so important. Like we were just at this festival, Meadows in the Mountains, and it's an eco festival, and they had, this is kind of gross, but they had compost toilets, and it was really like, I'm big on talking about like menstrual knickers and wearing them because they're reusable and you don't have any waste, and it's like a big thing for me. But when you go to the compost toilets in the festival on day 3 and you look down the hole and you just see a pile of sanitary napkins just sitting on top of each other, you're just going, that's horrendous. I mean,
it's going to be there for 500
years. It's going to be there forever.
Yeah.
And when you see it, when you get that visual thing, I think we all had that visual thing every time we went to the toilet, you'd go, and I can't do that. Like I have to make a change that's a bit different. And it's the same, like you saw that photograph and you were like, oh, that's not me. I'll just look through a few more. And then you were like, no, that's me, and now I can never go back. Like I have to just make that change now because it's in front of us. And we need to do that in everything, from all the inside to the outside to the world.
Yeah, we do. And again, the hardest bit is the beginning.
Always, isn't it?
Yeah.
Jonathan, thank you very, very much. It's been a really interesting chat.
Thanks, Finn. Thanks, Lydia.
Really amazing, and like your story is like really, it's inspiring me as well. And I'm not a runner, but
now I'm like, I'm gonna have to start running.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's weird how much it makes you just kind of go, in sort of like well, I wonder, could I? You know?
Yeah. But we have these. It's amazing how we have that thing still. Like I still have that thing. I'm not a runner. Like I'm just not a running person. So
do
that's
I.
Fine.
Yeah. Really? Really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But you're both.
Mile 99. I'm not a runner.
yeah.
That's what it's like, though.
Is it?
Yeah.
Amazing. Cool. Does anybody have questions for Jonathan that they'd like to ask, or things they'd like to share?
I'd like to ask a question. It's not perfect sounds and maybe a little bit weird. Like in the country, I noticed a lot of sport people has been encouraged to eat extra meat. How it works in long term.
So here lots of people have been encouraged to eat extra meats if they're athletes or runners, and she wants to know how is that in the long term.
This is the rugby people, footballers.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about runners.
Yeah. A lot of sports.
I have seen by myself, they have own nutritionist, and the nutritionist knows everything. And it's always extra meat for them presented. What's your opinion about that?
Well, my opinion is what worked for me is less meat. And for the less meat that I have, the healthier I feel and the better I feel and the more energy I have. So I'd feel the opposite to that for me.
Yeah.
And I can't see how it works for somebody else in the long term, but I mean, maybe it makes other people feel better, but for me, absolutely not.
Yeah. I think the real thing is biochemical individuality. Like, our genetics are coming from different parts of the world. Some, you know, some people have evolved. You know, unfortunately, our genes are very slow to evolve. You know, and when we have 2.5 million years of
From Mars.
well, maybe, who knows? I probably feel like it sometimes. But there's so much that we're trying to, like, we've changed our diet, and we've changed this like industrial and then post-industrial kind of like diet and lifestyle in the sort of blink of an eye from a genetic point of view. We've only got like a handful of generations, and so our genes are catching up, but they're catching up really slowly. And so if you have like somebody whose ancestry going back 7-10 generations more comes from a part of the world where they farmed a lot of meat and they ate a lot of meat, probably meat suits them because they have a different way of converting what's called the arachidonic acid in it, where the arachidonic acid doesn't just become an inflammatory thing, and maybe it fuels them in a better way.
In Ireland.
Yeah, well, maybe, but an Irish nation, Ireland nation is a weird thing because I mean, we lived on for a long time, and again, this is only a few generations in terms of genetics, but on potatoes and on really poor quality grains. And kind of kale and sort of stuff that we now feed cattle a little bit, or we feed sheep, and it was seen as nutritionally adequate. It didn't really help us from a genetic point of view. So I don't know. I mean, top athletes, it's so, you really need to know the person, and the person needs to, like what Jonathan's doing, is experimenting with himself each time he trains, and that's really the only way to know. I hate the way people are being pushed towards a carnivore diet or whey protein or plant-based protein, whatever, without like just trying it for themselves. You have to give something a crack for a couple of months or whatever and see does it work, and that's the only way to know. I think kids are so easily influenced by a senior nutritionist. They look at them like a demigod, or a lot of them might have come from sports backgrounds as well, and it's really tough for them to then make their own decision or listen to their parents instead of this outside voice that's like somebody who's actually accomplished stuff in their field. And it's a real challenge to be able to talk, to speak to power in that sort of way, in a way without kind of feeling like you're kowtowing or feeling like you want to be kind of just rowing with the crowd, I suppose. And that's what with kids it's a big thing as well. Fitting in is a huge thing.
Yeah. Did you have people at any point in your journey going, this is a rubbish way to do it, you've got to start eating the meat, eat all the meat, do the things that are different? And how did you
Well, being celiac as well made it difficult because I'm now seen as a celiac vegan. And I didn't get asked out for dinner for maybe 10 years.
Fiona came along.
Well, I mean, look, Fiona eats the same way as I do, so luckily, so that's kind of fine. But people would say, "What fad are you on this week?" And I'd say, "Well, the same one I've been on for the last 10 years," if that's how you look at it. Yeah. So, but if it's different, just how somebody else was brought up, they seem to take it almost as an offence somehow.
But people say they like, my parents would certainly say, "Well, I don't want to be one of those people." That you go to the place and you're like, I don't eat this and I don't eat this, and I'm like, but you don't eat that, and you don't eat it because it makes you feel bad.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's like a terrible thing to say, I don't eat that thing, it makes me feel bad. You're not expecting everyone else to suddenly change their life and do that thing. You're just going, this is just what I'm doing. But people do take it very personally. They think that you're saying, well, my way is the better way.
They sure do.
Your way is down there, but that's fine. You just carry on, and I'll sit over here on my high horse, and it's just not the case.
Well, I'd be well used to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, I know from people who say, "Well, why don't you come out for something to eat, and bring whatever you're having."
Eat around the chicken. Yeah.
Really, I mean, it's just it's shocking how people get offended by what you eat, and it's taken years to get over. But then people are a little better now than they were. We're a lot better because when I started doing this, people very rarely took responsibility for their own health. Like they didn't even make the connection from what I'm eating to how I'm feeling. And they didn't bridge that themselves. And it was like, that's that. We've always done it that way. We have a pint. I always like a pint of milk in the morning. I don't know why I'm so snotty all day, and or I can't breathe when I'm running for the bus or whatever it might be. And they don't make a link that it's actually, there's nobody coming to save you. It's your total responsibility what you eat.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think it is
for your own
weird
body.
though that we have that thing around. So my mum would feel like I don't want to make a fuss. So me saying I'm standing up for my health is making a fuss.
Yeah.
Where has that happened? why are we not going, oh, well, that's impressive.
Seen as like just being difficult,
Yeah.
essentially, yeah.
Yeah, and you never used to be like this. It's like,
Yeah.
did you see me 10 years ago?
Yeah, interesting, yeah, exactly, yeah. Wasn't
like,
that
it wasn't
successful?
working great, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? But is it just change is confronting? And when we're seeing change in the people around us, we find that really difficult to deal with. Like, have you found that with like friend groups or people that you tended to socialize with, and then you changed your life so drastically? Did you find that a lot of those people dropped away, or were they largely encouraging?
Oh no, very few encouraging.
Wow.
And people would think they were encouraging, like by buying you something they thought you'd eat, kind of, which is, you know, something I couldn't eat or would never eat, but like they would make an effort, but actually wouldn't like on the outside but wouldn't really make an effort to know why you were doing this or what you weren't eating, and I mean, people would think, well, like people would even sneak stuff in, like being celiac with gluten. Well, they think, well, never did me any harm, you know.
Wow.
And like, you know, family members too, you know, like it was just shocking, you know.
Like mildly poisoning you, like.
Yeah.
Well, when I moved to Ireland, I don't drink alcohol, and when I moved here, I was 21, so it was a while ago now. And now that's more like, I know lots of people who don't drink, and that's not a very big deal. But when I first moved here, people were like shocked by it, and they were like, "Oh, I'd have people say to me, I couldn't trust anyone who doesn't drink."
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, because I'm so unreliable. You know, at least tomorrow. But people would do that. They would go to the bar, and they'd, "What would you like to drink?" "I'll have a Sprite or something." And then they'd come back and they'd put it down, and I could smell the alcohol from the table because I haven't drunk in so long. And I'd be like, "That has alcohol in." No. I'm like, but I could be allergic, I could be pregnant, I could be anything.
Yeah.
You just have decided that, like, I know I don't like that you're not drinking, so I'll just slyly put that alcohol in there.
I know exactly how you feel.
To make me feel better. It's so weird.
I remember a situation many years ago where there were 9 of us out drinking, and it was 8 pints of Guinness, and then there was me. And because I'm celiac and I can't drink Guinness, I think I couldn't drink any beer. I had a vodka and cranberry. And when he went to the bar, he bought 8 pints of Guinness, and he wouldn't buy the vodka and cranberry because he was embarrassed. Now that was the kind of way it was, like back then. And now there's celiacs everywhere. There's gluten-free beer, like there's alcohol-free beer, all more normal. But then it was like, well, I'm just shocked. But people are that shocking.
Yeah, they won't make like a little kind of consideration for you, like tiny consideration really when you think about it. I mean, like, what's the big deal?
Yeah, they see it about them.
But that's it. They thought that I was judging them because I didn't drink. They thought I was going, well, you shouldn't be drinking, so I'm going to sit here and report everything that you do the next day and tell you all about it.
Yeah.
It's like,
Sense
no,
of threat.
I just don't do it, you know.
I think it's changing now.
Massively. I mean, we've got a fully alcohol-free bar permanently open on Maple Street, the Virgin Mary or whatever.
Yeah.
There's all like exciting botanical things.
Yeah.
People are into it now.
Definitely.
It's like gone hip.
Well, exactly. But I think something other than a cafe or a pub is a useful thing to be able to socialise in, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's nice to feel like a grown-up when you're going out if you don't drink. Like, I don't want to drink Sprite and Coke. I'd like to have a nice, enjoyable drink.
Yeah. Something someone's put some thought into, like
Yeah. It's not like you don't enjoy a nice drink. You're like, I just don't want the alcohol.
Yeah.
And I do want something that's pretending to be a beer as well.
Yeah.
Did you know about Ireland before you came here?
Whoops.
Where will I choose to live? I'm not a drinker. Ireland is a good choice. Yeah, I should have really thought that one through. I don't think I was quite early in that journey though. Like I'd only given up drinking when I was 19, so it was quite kind of. I wasn't like thinking of myself like I am now a non-drinker forever. It just happened, and then it
just
carried
evolved
on happening.
then.
Because it seemed strange at one point to go, well, now I'll just wean myself back onto alcohol. Because like at that point, I thought like I'm going to have to actually make an effort to start slowly and then build my tolerance back up, and that just seemed like a mad thing to do.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any?
Jonathan, we're here because you've written a book, and it's got a fluency of literacy that is to me is quite remarkable. There's a very it's very easy to assimilate and to understand, because so much of it is on the ball and to the point. And this is something that has been born out of your experience, because suddenly you're able to give birth to a book. is something that wasn't characteristic of your intellectuality before that.
I thought he was going with the compliment there, but it's sort of...
So now we're getting to the report card. Right?
yeah, exactly. That's funny. But what's lovely, it's like you're right. There's no fluff in it, but you can feel like writing a book would be a very daunting thing if you didn't have this like abundance of stuff you wanted to give people.
Yeah.
And that's what's nice about it. Like there's so much in there for people to get from, but you haven't had to like, oh, am I going to fill chapter 3? I don't know
And
what I'll do.
also,
with
I
this.
think also because you're doing it from experience and like your intuitions, and you're very much led by that. It's not like you're having to go like, well, what if this isn't the up-to-date science?
Yeah.
I better research this thing.
Sure,
And someone might turn around and go, no, wrong, incorrect.
Yes,
They
yeah.
can't, because it's you saying, well, this is how it was for me.
Yeah.
This is my journey. Try it.
Absolutely, this is my science
Yeah.
Yeah.
here,
Exactly.
actually, yeah.
And it feels that, if you feel that from the book, that it's you could actually just dip in and out of different bits of it. You don't have to read it all in one sequential order.
Yeah.
And that's really nice for people, I think, because
That was
you
the
don't
plan,
have to
yeah.
feel like I've started and now
Beginning,
I have
middle,
to
and end.
sit and through this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It's a good man.
Well, I finally got some compliments.
yeah, absolutely.
Jonathan, you haven't got to do too much research. You and your body encompassed everything you wanted to know. So maybe the next one you'll have to go to the National Library or something to look at.
True, I mean, maybe. I mean, this was supposed to be about the first steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the first steps are the hardest. I know we're talking about all the more fun stuff like the marathons and the ultra marathons and all that, but the first steps are by far the hardest, and that's where I couldn't find a guide to anywhere.
Yeah.
But is it? I think is it also because there's a little bit about, like certainly I'm finding with yoga and the way that I'm teaching yoga, I'm not doing the handstand upside down, most extreme version. That's not what I teach. I teach like how can we feel good in our body? How does it feel for you? And that's not super glamorous. So there's not a lot of people doing it, and you don't get like a whole host of social media followers going, wow, that was really inspiring seeing you sit and breathe for 2 minutes. And it's a little bit about that, isn't it? There's that's the reason why there's not so many books about going like, I am on the couch.
It's not sexy
How
at
do
all.
I get off
that
the
bit.
couch?
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
sexy,
yeah.
and it's not social media friendly. But it's the massive bit. I mean, that is the bit that fuels all the other bits. They cannot come unless we know. Like the person who's sitting at home who's going, I have never run, I don't have the gear, I actually feel rubbish in my mind, and I feel like maybe I'm not even worthy.
That's
like,
a massive
how do
thing.
you just literally step down and move forward?
Yeah, I mean, well, the book here is on sale on Amazon, and the biggest selling day was the day after the London Marathon. And I guess it's because it's on the TV all day, and like especially in London and England, and they're thinking, okay, I'm going to do something to get healthy. So the first thing you might do is put on the internet and look up a book, and you buy a book. Now, it's then only the people who are ready that are going to actually do the next step, because they'll read how to do the next step, hopefully, or they'll read how I did it.
Yeah.
But lots of people, like, they're just not ready for things, and especially things that aren't sexy, like how to just do something 3 times a week that's really hurting you, and like basic things.
Yeah. And that maybe nobody in your life is going to agree with.
Yeah, that's the worst of it. Yeah. And so you don't have any support because nobody knows how to support you because they think you're doing something really silly.
Yeah, and it's basic. It's not like
Yeah.
you're not going like, whew, after week 3, suddenly I found myself running to Bushy Park. You're just like, no, I was still puking in the bush. I was still walking for most of that thing.
And then it can even get worse when after 12 months, people start to think you're looking good, like you've lost maybe a stone, and you're like your eyes are getting brighter, and then people are going, well, I'm not. And therefore, like they're saying, okay, well, I'm going out with my mates tonight. You can go and do your milkshakey or whatever thing you drink nowadays. Soya milk or whatever it might be. So then people get a barrier. So you have to feel your way differently than in the world again.
And find supportive people around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big time.
Yeah.
I mean, I know because every time you've come in, she's been here. You obviously have great support there, which is amazing. And I mean, like, I think, I don't know whether do you always run alone, or do you tend to run with people? I know your son pacing you sometimes, you're saying on the...
No, I run during the week with other runners.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you prefer running with the gang?
I do, yeah.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, and it's not possible always.
Yeah.
Like at the moment, I run with runners and they're training for their first marathon. So that's kind of exciting. So I do runs with them, and then I do the longer runs on my own, maybe at the weekend.
So it's kind of like a school of life. Like everyone's kind of like at some level, and you're sort of able to like support other people around you who are just going through what you went through. And
absolutely, hopefully,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's really
That's a great community.
Yeah.
And is that the same in most running clubs, that you have that kind of that levels of?
Oh, I'd say absolutely, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, we're more friends that come together and do it.
Okay.
And like they're impromptu kind of a running club, I suppose.
Okay, nice.
People I work with and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, everyone is
You
different.
haven't got uniforms then?
No.
I'm glad to. Good.
No.
That's great. Any other
I was just going to ask you about your recovery. We talked there about protein.
Yeah.
I find it quite difficult to recover afterwards. Trying different things. Is there any one or two kind of key things that you do on a consistent basis that you're like, I have to do those things?
Repeat that question into our microphones.
What are your key tips for recovery? Things that you can't do without, if you were just to give like 1, 2, 3 things that you do every time?
Well, the first thing for me about recovery, especially for the longer distances, is I have to have the one thing, which is a protein drink. Now I put it into, it's not quite a drink, but I'll just tell you what I make. I have gluten-free oats. I put in a banana, I put in a scoop of peanut butter, and I put in Sun Warrior protein powder and some almond milk, soya milk, rice milk, whatever I have. And I blend it and I eat it or I drink it, depending. But that's what works for me. And I mean, I can run up to 20 miles and then the next day I won't feel it whatsoever. Even more if I have that. If I don't have it, I can wake up so stiff. But another thing would be to make sure to eat. And I try and eat small amounts often after long training runs. I don't always manage it because I might fall asleep on the couch or, but I try to. And the more I can fuel after, the better I'll feel. And I'm always worse off if I don't eat. And the worst part is I never feel like food. So I have to really
Consciously do that.
And therefore a lot often is much easier. Because often, like, we'd all go out for brunch or something afterwards, and most people would pick around something and have a coffee, and but I try and eat food. But that protein powder is the big one for me.
Okay. And have you tried things like magnesium or other kind of like well-known recovery aids or glutamine or these things?
I have done, yeah.
Okay, yeah. But you don't find that they've provided significant benefit for you in your situation?
Not for me, no.
Interesting.
I mean, there would probably be more benefit for me during.
Yeah. But it's that potassium, fiber, B vitamins, protein, whatever's going on in that seems to work right. Amazing. Yeah.
That's what does it for me.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
I mean, like, there's lots of things I can still learn, like how to last longer when running, and like by getting more supplements and taking salts and whatever. But, hopefully you can help me in that.
For sure.
I don't know about this, but is there like a stretching, is there like a warm down thing that you need to do the next day or like a couple of hours later, or is there like a complementary movement based thing that you need to do afterwards?
For me, no. What I do is walk.
Okay.
And walking is the best. I used to try stretching, but quite often I'd be too exhausted and I just wouldn't bother. Or I'd sit down and then I'd just say, I could actually lie down here. So I wouldn't do it. So what I try to do is finish a half a mile before the end quite often.
Okay.
And then walk it.
Okay.
And that would be it for me. And if ever I'm sore or whatever, I'll walk first until I lose that stiffness, and then run it.
Okay, so you don't do like Aldoa stretching or foam rolling or anything?
No, I don't do anything. No, especially not foam rolling, anything that hurts.
Okay, right.
But
you do enough hurting when you're running, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd be more gentle with myself than that.
Okay, interesting.
Okay. So just loosening out slowly.
Yeah.
Or I'd even start by jogging very slowly.
Yeah.
And then I'd get into it.
There's that great reference to dogs when they get out of their. I was actually watching my next door neighbour's dog this morning. Beautiful sunrise, and he got out of his hut and he did a little up dog, down dog, and then just sat in the sunshine and then wandered around and started barking annoyingly. But it's amazing how they won't get up without stretching.
Yeah.
It's their first approach to the day, and we so often it's like, oh, social media, bathroom, shower, or in some varied order.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Actually, about the morning ritual, I find I run best in the evening. I feel that my muscles and my body is awake. But then often competitions or different things that often be in the morning. Do you find a difference in yourself morning or evening, and are there any ways to kind of counteract that or work around it?
Sorry, so she was saying that she runs best in the evening?
Yeah.
Yeah. But often competition times are in the morning, and are there any ways that you can combat that if you tend to be an evening runner versus a morning runner?
I find exactly the same thing. And sometimes in the evening, I just don't have it. Whatever goes on from work or too many coffees or too tired, I don't know, but I don't have it. But usually I'm the same, the evening is the time. And sometimes, like especially going to a marathon abroad where 9 o'clock in the morning for us and it's suddenly 7 o'clock there. So what I tend to do is to prepare by getting up early and just having a couple of runs, especially the week before, like getting up or running at 5 or 6 in the morning, which would be the time that the run would start at. But I do find it hard as well, and I don't quite know how to get around it. But other than just do it, like as in do the training for it, like get up at that time.
There's a load of research happening around chronotypes and circadian rhythms at the moment, and like they do a lot of stuff, a lot of work with horses actually. Is what weirdly my cousin's best friend developed this thing that they use with racehorses now around the world, because racers, there's huge money involved in whether being flown to different parts of the world and expected to race the next day. And horses actually, I think they say that their circadian rhythm will switch to the local time within roughly like 24 hours, but sometimes they're required to run sooner than that. So she developed this mask in UCD actually, in one of the labs in UCD, where they have like a blue light kind of essentially mask that they put on the horse to train it at a certain time in the morning. And you can use things like blue light blocking glasses, or like there's an intranasal light therapy device called something like, I'll find it for you, I'll get it for you. But things because we have receptors for blue light in our ears and in our nostrils, where it can charge us with serotonin, melatonin. We can actually train your circadian rhythm really well with that. There's a guy called Ben Greenfield who I follow online who talks about that intraoral light therapy, and he would use it for those sorts of things, because the circadian rhythm thing is really awkward, because again, we're so individual when it comes to everything in our lives, and then to be expected to all perform the same, or the best at least, at that same time of day it's a huge ask, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think we could both use
some of those, yeah. Okay, I better go Googling that. Remember, refresh my memory. We'll put it in the notes.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any queries?
I just like to ask,
Yeah.
what kind of protein powder do you use for your milkshake?
Just to,
Protein powder. It's
Yeah.
Sun Warrior is the one I think you use.
Yeah.
Sun Warrior rice protein.
Yeah.
Is it cow's milk or?
No, I don't use any animal products. I stay away from cow's milk, totally. That was one of the first things I gave up, because it affected my breathing, and I could tell like more would block my head, and I'd have a blocked nose, which made it quite difficult. And the longer I stayed off cow's milk, the better I can breathe. And running, for me, over distance seemed to be all about breathing. And once I could get the breathing right, and my legs were always strong enough, I just had to train them. But once the breathing was fine, so the first thing to go in my running life was cow's milk. So never, in any form.
I had yesterday wine and cheese, like Stilton cheese, but it's so tasty, the Stilton cheese with peaches,
Okay.
How it calls this one?
With
Sweet one.
quince jelly, is it quince paste or something? Is it?
No.
I'm not sure.
It's a cheese. It is like a corn. It's a cheese
Oh.
and with pieces of cranberry or.
Okay. I'm not sure what it is.
That one.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I had so much, and there was coffee all night long.
Interesting, yeah.
It's not related to cold and flu.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah, the mucus production thing is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people who have issues with dairy. I think we're unfortunate. We're living in an age where there isn't enough actual infectious bacteria to put pressure on our immune system to keep our immune system occupied. That's one of the theories, anyway. Well, exactly. So our immune system turns on. Well, that's it. Our immune system's turning on to things that are normal foods, or what would have been considered normal foods, and now they're treating them like allergens. I think it's a big problem at the
Because
moment.
cheese is concentrated milk.
Exactly,
So maybe
exactly.
half a bucket of milk.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot, yeah.
Yeah, but we are all different, yeah.
No, big time, yeah. Anybody else? Any queries? Nope. Okay, well, you have goodie bags on the back of your chairs. that don't contain sunwire rice protein. I'm sorry, because actually our podcast is supported by Newzest, which is a pea-based protein. But go and enjoy that as well, and hopefully we'll get Jonathan onto it one of these days as well. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming. Really appreciate all your questions, all your attention, and I hope you all enjoyed it. And thank you, Jonathan, and thanks so much for your sharing your story. That was a joy. And thank you guys for watching. And we'll post all of your things. I feel like I'm not doing a podcast now. It's weird. I'm like talking to you guys, talking to them.
Thank you for watching.
Go,
and if you have any questions, because you weren't here in person, you can't ask them to us right now, do put them in the comments, and we will pass them on to Jonathan and go buy his book. And come find him so he can sign copies for you.
Absolutely, yeah. Cool. Nice one. See you guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.